Hi everyone, I'm back again with the Pirates CSG Battle Report video, this time for a 4-player game that I played last weekend with my younger brother and a couple of his friends. This was actually the first time they'd played the Pirates game, so some mistakes were made, but some lessons were learnt, and I think everyone involved had a good time, as they said they'd be eager to have another go at the game at some point in the future. This photo here is just of all the ships in my collection, most of them from the Pirates of the Caribbean and the Pirates of the Revolution set, though there's a couple other ones mixed in there that maybe you can spot. For this game, we played a 15 points game by my pools format system, which equates to about 40 points by the regular standard. And so, yeah, I thought that'd be a good size fleet for them to have their first game with. So, just to remind everyone how it works, each player takes 3 ships from each of the 4, 5, and 6 pool for this game, and then you pick 1 from each of those pools, and that makes up your fleet. Also, each of your ships comes with a free captain if you want to use it, plus you also get an extra generic crew from that list there per ship in your fleet, but you can use that how you want for your fleet. But you're also not allowed to use the same crew more than twice there, so you're only allowed 1 helmsman, for example. For this game, we decided to pick 4 unique treasures at random from that pool there, and the gold value each player contributes is equal to the value of their fleet, so 15 for a total of 60, and we played first to 20. I actually normally play 2-player games. I think this is actually the first time I can remember playing a 4-player game. And I realised when I was checking some rules afterwards that when you're playing more than 2 players, you're actually supposed to just remove the treasure from play when you sink a ship that has treasure on it. And I was playing the 2-player rules, which for next time I'll remember not to do that, but we were doing that in this game. So on to the picks. These are my younger brother Steven's picks. And again, I've just used some images from psmlist.com for the deck plates here, and he decided to pick the Cursed Blade, the El San Francisco, and the Hanyu Pinyin. And then he decided to crew his fleet like this. And again, this was one of their first games, so they maybe didn't have the optimal crew setup there. Probably should have had a captain on the Hanyu Pinyin there. And this was Rob's fleet choices, and he decided to go with Le Favori, HMS Victor, and the Kirbac. And again, this was another situation where he slightly understaffed his fleet there. Should have definitely had a captain on that HMS Victor. And also, there was the unfortunate case of the oarsman here, which was both equal parts sad and funny when it was revealed. I didn't know what he'd picked at the time. He thought, when I explained the oarsman, that the speed of that and the galley would add together to make them go faster when they're derelict, which of course isn't the case. But again, I didn't know he'd picked it, so I couldn't correct him at the time. But yeah, I think some people didn't want to put as many crew on because they were a bit scared of not having enough cargo space left on their ships. But they sort of realised as the game went on the mistake they'd made. But that's all part of the learning experience. That goes on to Kyle's fleet. For his pool 6, he had some quite gunny choices there, and he did decide to go with the 5-mast United States, as well as El Leon and the infamous Banshee's Cry. Kyle actually, I thought, crewed his fleet quite well, opting not to use the captain of the Banshee's Cry there to save the cargo space, which I think was a good call. Which leads on to my fleet choices, and on my fleet, I decided to go with the Seraph as my top pick there, the Bloody Jewel, and then also the Carolina. And for my fleet, I kept all the captains on all my ships, and I also put a Musketeer and Cannoneer on that Seraph to really pack it out with some extra firepower. And just to compare the fleets here, we each gave ourselves a country that we're representing with a flag on our home island. Though in the actual game, me and Kyle were switched the other way around, but I've decided to retroactively change that because Kyle had the United States, so it felt appropriate for him to be representing America in this game. And just to show you the actual points values of these fleets, you can see they're all around that 40 points marks, although with some extra crew that probably should have been involved. Maybe it would have been priced a bit more like this, especially for Rob's fleet with a captain on the HMS Victor and maybe a Cannoneer on the Kirbac there. So this was the setup we had on the board. Again, this is one of the first times I'd played a 4-player game, so I wasn't sure what a good way would be to set up the islands and terrain. So if you've got any hints and ideas for how you set up yours for multiplayer games, that would be helpful in the comments below. But we all decided that partway through the game that we definitely should have made that central whirlpool another island, and possibly that we should have put more coins on each of the islands as well, because we noticed that a lot of the treasures were just gone within the first few rounds of the game, which made that part of the game feel a little bit less relevant. But yeah, we just set up in the corners there just to try and make it a bit more equal. And then I'll just go over to our overhead view, and then that takes us back into our diagrams here. I was quite pleased with the feedback I got for this. So like I said, I tried to keep them sort of basic, the graphics here, to try and keep it clean, but I got a lot of positive feedback there. Hopefully it still stays clear with now that there's more ships and stuff involved, but we'll see. We'll hopefully you enjoy that. I've decided to put a little picture on each of the wild islands there, just so when I'm reading it out, you'll know which one I'm talking about. So starting at the top island, going clockwise, we've got north, star, sun, south, lightning, and moon, just so you're a little bit with what I'm talking about more. So Kyle rolled highest to start the game, so he began, and we decided to just go clockwise around the table from there. And as per usual, the first few turns, not a huge amount happens, it's just people positioning our ships, but that was the beginning of the game there. So yeah, you can see the first move action as the Banshee's Cry just moves towards that Star Island there, as well as Elion and United States sort of splitting their various ways. Stephen's turn 1, and he sends the Cursed Blade towards the South Island, as well as El San Francisco towards the Sun Island, and the Hanyu Pinion sort of just supporting down the south there as well. Rob's turn 1, and he does a similar sort of play, with La Favori going towards the Lightning Island, and the HMS Victor and Kirbac both moving towards that South Island, possibly to contest that in future turns. My turn 1, and I send the Carolina and the Bloody Jewel towards the North Island, and I send the Seraph slightly south towards the Moon Island to try and secure that part of the board. On to turn 2, and the Banshee's Cries already managed to pick up her first treasure from the Star Island, with her Explorer letting her do it straight away. It's the first docking action of the game, whilst the United States and Elion both continue their journeys. Turn 2 for Stephen, and he manages to reach both the South and Sun Islands with his 2 ships, and the Hanyu Pinion just following up there at a slightly slower base speed. And then you can see them docked up at those 2 islands, waiting to explore on the next turn. And turn 2 for Rob, and again he manages to reach the Lightning Island with La Favori, and the HMS Victor and Kirbac continue their journey towards the South Island to contest that. And then my turn 2, and the Bloody Jewel manages to reach that North Island with the Carolina alongside, and the Seraph continues towards the Moon Island there. Turn 3, and the Banshee's Cry is already on her way back to her home island with her first shipment of treasure. The Elion moves forward to contest the Northern Island there, and the United States moves towards the southern waters, looming threateningly over the El San Francisco there. And Stephen's turn 3, and he realises that he's going to have to manoeuvre the Hanyu Pinion to face the approaching United States. And then he also explores that South Island with the Cursed Blade. Unfortunately, he reveals the Cannibal's unique treasure, which eliminates his helmsman, which will be the start of his woes for this game that you'll see. But he picks up the other 3 treasures on the island there. At this point, he also decides to explore the Sun Island with El San Francisco. Possibly here he maybe should have manoeuvred away from the approaching United States, besides to chance it. And he also reveals the Rum unique treasure, which, whilst being worth a very nice 4 gold, also has the unfortunate side effect and makes you miss your next turn for that ship. So the El San Francisco's almost paralysed against the approaching United States there. So turn 3 for Rob, and he takes the treasure from the Lightning Island with no negative unique treasures there. And the HMS Victor decides to change course towards the north. I think at this point there was maybe a sort of deal struck between Rob and Stephen that because the United States was already bearing down on him, the HMS Victor was going to show mercy on the Spanish fleet. But the Kirbac still remains interested just to see what's going on with the Southern Island there. My turn 3, and the Carolina moves alongside El Leon for the first shoot action of the game. She doesn't have the best cannons, but I was hoping to score at least 1 hit, but unfortunately luck was against me, and no damage was caused. And because of this, I felt like the Bloody Jewel was not safe to explore that North Island, so I decided to move her around to try and shoot at El Leon as well. Unfortunately, again, the dice were against me, and both shots missed. So here was the first shoot action of the game, so the cannons of war were sounding out, but unfortunately no damage was done. And because of this, I sort of panicked a little bit and decided to move the Seraph towards that North Island as well to try and assist, because the Elleon's got this quite powerful gun, so I was quite scared I was going to lose the rest of my fleet there. And it was also about this point in the game where I realised I probably should have sent the Carolina towards that Moon Island and the Seraph in assistance to the Bloody Jewel instead, but hindsight's 2020, as they say. So this was the board position. I think this was part way through my turn, because the Seraph hasn't quite moved yet, but most of the action from turn 3 has happened here. You can see the conflict for the Northern Island there started, as well as the United States moving in towards the 7 areas of the board there. So on to a turn 4 for Kyle, and the Banshee's Cry finishes her first shipment of treasure, dropping that off at the home island there. And then the United States pulls alongside the helpless El San Francisco there, who was powerless against the American cannons, and is sunk instantly. So yeah, the first blood of the game is drawn. And like I said, we were playing the 2-player rules for treasure, so it was split between the 2 home islands at this point. Then by the North Island, the Elleon moves between the North Island and the rear of the Bloody Jewel and opens fire. And fortunately for me, she only manages to score 1 hit, as I was very nervous that she was going to be able to sink another ship for Kyle there. But fortunately, all she lost was her rear mast there. On to Stephen's turn 4, and I think this was the point he realised that a captain on the Hanyu Pinion would have been very handy. So instead, decides to make some evasive action and move the Hanyu Pinion away from the United States. Maybe try and be a distraction for the Cursed Blade, who's trying to make her way back to the home island with her treasure on board. Rob's turn 4, and I'm not exactly sure what the plan with Lefavre was here, as she's fully laden, doesn't have any spare cargo slots left, but she manages to dock up at the Moon Island with the HMS Victor in support. Maybe you just wanted to have those 2 ships there to contest that island, I'm not entirely sure. And the Kirbac, now realising that she's too slow to catch up with the Cursed Blade, moves towards the north as well. Which leads to my turn 5, where the Bloody Jewel does a 3-point turn to dock back at the North Island there, and opens fire with a 1 remaining cannon against El Leon, managing to successfully score 1 hit this time. And then the Carolina also moves alongside, and a bit more lucky than last turn, but would have hoped for another 2 hits here, but I did manage to score a 1 at least, leaving El Leon with a single mast remaining. Now that I feel like I'm winning the battle at the North Island there, I decide to move the Seraph back towards the Moon Island to engage with Lefavre as I could get in range. She's obviously immune to the long-range cannon of the middle mast, but along with the help of the musketeer on board, the Seraph manages to fortunately score 2 successful hits, leaving Lefavre derelict. So yeah, again, perhaps Rob should have just brought that treasure home to safety, but maybe I'll ask him next time what his plan was there. And yeah, there we go. The Lefavre left derelict whilst the HMS Victor tries to come to her support. So on to turn 5, and the Banshee's Cry decides to move back towards the Star Island to collect that last treasure. She doesn't want to get too mixed up in the conflict at the North Island at this point. And the United States pulls up alongside the Hanyu Pinion. She was trying to get in range of the Cursed Blade here, but didn't manage to quite do it, so she chooses the Hanyu Pinion as her target. Fortunately for Stephen, she only hits 2 of her shots there, leaving 1 mast remaining at the front of the Hanyu Pinion. And you can see in that picture there, the Cursed Blade just outside of range of the United States guns. So on to the battle at the north of the island, North Island again. The El Leon decides to stand her ground and fire a last shot at the Bloody Jewel, which manages to strike true, leaving her derelict on that North Island there. So on to Stephen's turn 5, and you can see here the loss of the helmsman, the Cursed Blade to the cannibals, meant that the Cursed Blade couldn't get back to the Spanish home island in 2 turns this time, which would prove potentially fatal on the next turn, we'll see. And the Hanyu Pinion decides to try and act as distraction and fires a shot into the United States and manages to successfully take at least 1 mast off the American juggernaut, taking her rear mast off there. On to Rob's turn 5, and this was where he realised that the HMS Victor probably should have had a captain, so instead he tries to ram the Seraph. Then the Kirbac's just moving up the middle of the board there to try and assist. The ram does successfully cause the Seraph to lose a mast there, but the boarding roll was unsuccessful, though the HMS Victor didn't have anything to lose in the boarding roll there. So yeah, you can see the HMS Victor getting up close and personal there. My turn 5, when I move the Carolina around to dock at the North Island again and unload my cannons into the El Leon, finally hitting one more shot. Kyle reveals the potions and brews, unique treasure, which I didn't tell him that he shouldn't have unloaded this, but that wasn't his fault. I didn't tell him the rules there. But made me re-roll a shot, but I managed to hit it again, leaving El Leon derelict. So I finally won the battle over that North Island there. Again, if I'd sent the Seraph, I probably would have got that a lot more easy, but it is what it is. And the Seraph then pivots to dock at the Moon Island, as well as opening her mast up to shoot at the HMS Victor. And unfortunately, even with +1 to her cannon rolls against English ships, she only managed to score one successful hit here. And then this picture is the board state at the end of turn 5. You can see the United States at the bottom of the picture there is wreaking havoc with Stephen's fleet, and the conflicts are opening up, and with a few derelict ships already around the board. On to turn 6, and the Banshee's Cry collects that last treasure from the Star Island, and the United States manoeuvres behind the Cursed Blade, and Stephen was praying that these shots missed, but unfortunately for him, 3 shots struck true, and that left the Cursed Blade derelict, and you can see in the image there just how close he was to his home island and delivering that treasure there. So Stephen, with not much left to do with his fleet, and the Hanyu Pinyin not having a clear way back to her home island, decides to just move north in search of some other quest. Not sure what the game plan quite was at this point, but without much else to do, that's pretty much all he could do. Turn 6 for Rob, and the Seraph moves towards that central whirlpool, although doesn't quite manage to reach it. And possibly the HMS Victor should have just stood still and shot at the Seraph here, but Rob decides to move her in to ram the rear of the Seraph, possibly because he wanted to try and get rid of some of the crew on the Seraph as well. But unfortunately for him, the ram and boarding rules both fail for him, leaving the Seraph untouched for this turn. I moved on to my turn 6, and I finally managed to explore that northern island with the Carolina and pick up the treasure there. And I also repositioned the Seraph to open up her guns against the HMS Victor once more. And this time I'm much more successful, and I get 3 successful hits, sinking the HMS Victor. And you can actually see in this image here the misprinted masts of the Seraph, as the central mast is actually meant to be the 2 mast, but we were playing as the deck plate reads. Turn 7, and the Banshee's Cry just doing her own thing still, bringing that single treasure back towards her home island, and the United States just pivots round so that she's still in range of the Cursed Blade to send another volley of gunfire, and finally sinking the Cursed Blade. That leaves us on to Stephen's turn 7, and again didn't have much to do at this point, and just keeps moving the Hanyu Pinyin up towards the north. And Rob's turn 7, the Kirbac finally manages to get through that whirlpool and comes out in range of the Seraph and decides to open fire. Unfortunately for her, she rolls a 1 on one of the cannon rolls, so while she hits one mast and takes one mast off the Seraph, she also takes one of her own out as well. And this is where I was expecting the second crew on the Kirbac to be revealed as a Cannoneer, but it wasn't revealed at this point. And you can see the damage done as the Kirbac rolls a 1 against herself, which led to my turn 7, and the Carolina starts making her way back to my home island, and the Seraph again repositions with only 1 mast left, but still has her musketeer on board and manages to successfully hit 2 shots, leaving the Kirbac with no masts. And I think it was at this point where the oarsman was revealed, and I had to give Rob the unfortunate news that the 2 effects don't stack together. So yeah, there we go. The 2 derelict ships with the Seraph perhaps gaining control now of the Moon Island as well. So this was the board state at the end of turn 7, and again there's even more derelict ships on the field now. The United States is turned around looking for an ex-victim, and the game continues. So turn 8, and the Banshee's Cry actually decides to make a detour towards that North Island, since there's one treasure left and no other ships really there to contest it. And the United States decides makes her way towards the centre of the map there. And turn 8, and the Hanyu Pinyin just continues her journey. I think Stephen revealed that at this point that his plan was to try and capture another Spanish ship for himself and get the early on and bring it home. But I don't know how many turns that would have taken, but I'll give you a quick little spoiler there. She doesn't make it home. Rob's turn 8, and he's got not much left of his fleet either, and the Kirbac starts making the sad, slow trip back towards her home island and attempts to maybe repair some masts. My turn 8, the Carolina continues her voyage, and the Seraph docks up at the Moon Island. She doesn't have much cargo space to pick up any treasure, but with the United States approaching, I think I might as well try and grab something. I also decided to try and open fire on La Favrerie, but I can only shoot with my musketeer as I've only got my long-range cannon remaining, and unfortunately that shot fails, so La Favrerie still stays there derelict with her treasure on board. Kyle's turn 9, and the Banshee's Cry picks up that last treasure on the North Island, and the United States continues into the centre of the map there. And Stephen's turn 9, and he continues his journey towards the Elion. Rob's turn 9, and he continues his journey back towards his home island. And my turn 9, and I finally managed to get some treasure back to my own island with the Carolina, and I explore the Moon Island, revealing Jack's piece of 8, the unique treasure. So that's the last unique treasure in the game found, and as well as taking one of the other treasures from the island. And Kyle's turn 10, and the Banshee's Cry starts moving back towards his home island, and the United States is starting to move perilously close to the La Favrerie and the Seraph there. Stephen's turn 10, and he finally manages to reach his target early on, and he was so proud of himself he took a before and after image of the Elion being moved into the towing position. And Rob's turn 10, the slow journey continues, leading on to my turn 10, where the Carolina goes back onto the oceans looking for her next job, and the Seraph decides to move away from the Moon Island, not messing around with La Favrerie with the United States approaching. Which led us to turn 11 for Kyle, which ended up being the last turn of the game, where the Banshee's Cry dropped off her load of treasure, which I think actually brought Kyle up to the 20-point total, but he also did his shoot action against La Favrerie, even though he was actually only able to use one gun because of the long-range immunity of La Favrerie. It struck true, sinking the French ship and ending the game. So, like I said, that brought our game to a conclusion, and the final gold totals were 26 to Kyle, 11 to me in second place, just about pipping out Stephen at 10, with Rob in last place at 5. And like I said, I think if we'd done the actual proper rules of that these coins don't get split after the sunk ship, then I think Kyle still probably would have won, but obviously Stephen and Rob would have been left on 0 as they didn't actually manage to bring any home by themselves. But I think I'm still pretty happy with how the game went. Like I said, for me on that early turns of the game, I think I probably should have sent the Seraph and Carolina there, 2 different ways to that they went, but that's just what it is. And just for a little bit of fun, I decided to do like a damage chart here, and as you can see the United States at the top there, though the Seraph actually matched her for masts destroyed, although the United States managed to sink more ships. And possibly if the HMS Victor and Hanyu Pinyin both had a captain, maybe they would have got some more damage in this game. So yeah, this was the final state of the board at the end of the game. You can see me marking down something on my notes there. I think I was actually putting down the gold total so I can remember those for later. And these were the ships and fleet that survived to tell the tale. So Kyle's fleet, he still had most of his still pretty well intact. The United States has only taken 1 damage to one of her rear mast. Elion was derelict, but still in the game. Stephen's fleet with only the Hanyu Pinyin with that front mast still left. Rob's looking even sorrier state with the Kirbac with no mast, making her slow journey back to the home island. And my fleet also not too bad condition, though Bloody Jewelers was left derelict, and the Carolina still had all of her masts. So after the game, when I was making this video, I decided to go back and look at the ship picks and decided if I would have done anything different. If you want to give your opinions on what your picks would have been, feel free to share those in the comments below. I always like to see what ideas you guys come up with. I think in row 6 here, I might have been tempted to go the HMS Hyena, though I'm biased to that ship because it's one of my favourites. Though the Cursed Blade does have the advantage of the pivot from the schooner, and I think Stephen quite liked the idea of that ability there, so maybe you could argue between the two. I think his 4th row was quite a difficult pick. The Hanyu Pinyin does have some powerful guns if you can get that ability going, but otherwise it's quite slow. And the Peacock is very fast but doesn't have much cargo space. Possibly you could have gone with the Peacock without any crew in it and maybe gone for the Revenge and put a helmsman on there to put the guns on. But other than that, I think his fleet choices weren't too bad, other than obviously you should just put that captain on the Hanyu Pinyin there. And onto Rob's fleet, the Favori, I quite like that as his top pick. I think Hades Flame could have been an option if there was more terrain and stuff on the board. I know I've seen some other players' games where they might like to put much more terrain down. In this board, though, because I didn't put as much down, I think the Favori was definitely the go-to choice there. Again, I like the HMS Victor choice as well. Very nice gunship, but she does have a captain. You probably could make an argument for the Boston here, who's only got slightly less powerful guns and has that extra cargo space just in case you needed that. But I think I would have stuck with Victor. And in the last row there, I probably would have gone for La Provence, just have that faster base speed and that slightly more reliable guns that don't take yourself out. But I liked the brave attempt at the Kirbac there, but I definitely would have put a Cannoneer on there myself. Which brings us to Kyle's fleet. And I think in the top row, I'd actually been tempted to go to the HMS Nautilus here. With that much faster base speed and still very good guns, and that maybe would have freed up the helmsman to possibly go on early on, or possibly I might have even gone for the HMS Success here, even though our guns are slightly worse. With that extra mast, gives it a lot extra sticking power, and I think the Banshee's Cry was just an automatic pick here, as he didn't really have many other decent gold running options. Princess can be okay at gold running, but when the Banshee's Cry is available there, I think there was no reason not to take it. And I went back to my fleet, and I think I was fairly happy with this. I thought for the Seraph that there was a good chance other people would be picking more English ships. There only ended up being one other one, but she was still my most powerful gunship, so I think I was happy with that. I think the Bloody Jewel is just a slightly better version of the El San Jose, although the El San Jose's ability can be quite useful sometimes. And maybe I could have gone for Latland if I wanted some more firepower, but I felt like my choices were okay here. Like I said again earlier, I think my biggest problem that I had in my game is just where I sent the Sarah from Carolina. Should have switched those round. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the video, and it ended up being quite a long one, so hopefully it didn't drag out too much for you and you guys still enjoyed it. It was quite fun to make this. It was something a bit different, and maybe I'll do something again in the future. Might not be for a little while yet. I've got some time off after Christmas, so maybe if I play some games around there, I might do another battle report video then. But otherwise, feel free to leave your feedback and stuff in the comments. I'd be happy to see any suggestions and stuff. Again, like I said, this was my first 4-player game, so if anyone's got any other suggestions of ways they like to play those games, that would be helpful as well. But otherwise, thanks again for watching, and yeah, see you next time.